Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Welcome back to Beyond Wellness Radio. Really excited. Today is going to be an amazing show. My friend Dr. David Jockers is here in the house. He's got a new book right here. Bada bing, bada boom, the Keto Metabolic Breakthrough. Really excited to have him on today's show. Dr. David, how are we doing, man?
Justin, doing great. Always great to be on with you.
Excellent, man. So let's talk about this book. I mean, number one, I've been kind of going through it the last couple of days. I love some of the infographics that you guys have in here. Everything's really actionable. So, I mean, so obviously ketosis is like the newest thing. It's been around for forever, right? Let's just talk like, what is ketosis? What's the goal of being a ketosis? What does that look like for people?
Yeah, for sure. So most people are in a state of chronic sugar burning. So our body can run off of glucose, which is sugar, or fat, or ketones, basically. And ketones are a byproduct of fat metabolism. The unique thing about ketones is that they're water soluble and they cross through the blood-brain barrier. So fatty acids themselves can't cross the blood-brain barrier. So when your blood sugar goes down, for most people, they respond with hypoglycemic reactions, right? So they get irritable, stressed, right? Have a lot of different symptoms that way. If you're metabolically flexible and you've got ketones in your system, your brain can run off of the ketones. So you don't experience hypoglycemic effects. And ketones are a much better fuel source than sugar because they create significantly more energy per compound, per unit. And then also they create significantly less metabolic waste. So they're a much cleaner energy source than glucose. Glucose produces a lot of metabolic waste, a lot of oxidative stress in the body that ages us. I mean, think about like rusting an apple or something like that, like rust. And that's pretty much what's happening. So we want to have the metabolic flexibility to where we're good at using sugar when we need to, and that we do need to use it when we're, for example, exercising at a really high intensity or if we're under tremendous stress. However, we want to primarily be using fat and ketones for our fuel source when we're at rest, when we're sitting at our desk working, when we're doing 99% of the activities that we're doing throughout the day. We should be using mostly fat and ketones as an energy source because it's just so much cleaner and we produce so much more energy from it, and it's going to reduce the aging process. And so when we're using ketones as a fuel source, we notice that we have better energy, that we have better mental clarity, better cognitive acceleration. We're able to think sharply and quickly. We also notice that we have reduced inflammation in our bodies. So that means less pain, means cleaner skin, just so many great benefits to it. And of course, it's great, and what it's marketed for is weight loss, right? So it's great for maintaining lean body mass and staying lean and fit.
Yeah, I like that. So essentially, we're just trying to make changes to our macronutrients to upregulate enzymes and hormones that help us burn fat for fuel. And then the whole goal of that is we're restricting carbohydrates to an amount that keeps insulin at a lower level. When insulin's lower, then we can upregulate hormone-sensitive lipase or these lipolytic fat breaking down enzymes so we can access this fat for fuel. Is that kind of the overall goal?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we can get into ketosis through fasting. We can do it through exercise, and then we can do it through a low carbohydrate, high fat template diet.
Mm-hmm. Now, I kind of describe it as, and you can kind of highlight it too, there's three ways to get in ketosis. There's nutritional ketosis, where you're modulating your macros, but still getting enough calories while keeping insulin low, because you can still higher fat, moderate protein, lower carbs, 20 to 50 on the net carb side. Some people, they can do more depending on how active they are, but that's going to allow them to get their insulin low enough where they're burning fat, but there's still enough nutrition coming in where they're not going to be catabolized in their muscle. Then there's just straight up fasting, which chronically over time, you'll eventually start ripping up muscle. And then of course there's going to be ketoacidosis, but that's a little bit different. That's more when there's not enough insulin, type 1 diabetes kind of situation, right? And
or
that's where the
calorie restriction over time too, So if you're calorie restricted over time, you're going to be producing ketones as well. It's kind of like the fasting mimicking diet. It's a calorie restricted model. So it's a partial fast that can help produce ketones as well.
But what's the problem with that? Because obviously every fad diet out there has that in common long-term with some kind of a calorie restriction. But the research is kind of clear that there is some kind of a down regulation in the metabolism because the body's like, yo, there's not enough fuel here. We have to decrease how much fuel we're burning. So then there's this kind of downshifting of the metabolism when that's chronic, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the ancestral model is a feast famine model, right? So you think about our ancestors, they weren't able to necessarily get their full caloric needs every day, but over time, so they would kill something or they would have a good harvest or whatever it was, they would feast, they would eat a calorie surplus. And then there would be times where they would have a calorie deficit. So it's kind of this feast famine cycle. And that's actually very healthy for our body, is this sort of feast famine cycle. When we feast, we help activate thyroid hormone. We, increase the amount of insulin. We basically tell the body, you don't have to be under stress because we have plenty of food available. But of course, there's problems if we're feasting all the time. We're going to end up accelerating the amount of inflammation. And it's kind of the same thing with fasting. Fasting is very anti-inflammatory, reduces inflammation, but it, basically plummets our insulin all the way down. We don't get good conversion of our thyroid hormone, and it puts a little more stress on our body because our body is saying, hey, we need to find food. We need to find food. So we want to rotate between those cycles. And if we're calorie restricted for too long, we're going to end up with lower levels of active T3, higher levels of cortisol, and hormone dysregulation that's going to end up taking place. So short-term calorie restriction, for something like 3 to 5 days can be really beneficial for certain individuals. And if you're very lean, like somebody like myself, I'm, 8% body fat, I've got to be really careful with calorie restriction. I can do it on a day-to-day basis with intermittent fasting. And I can even do up to maybe a 5-day fast, but beyond that, be really, really stressful on my system. Other people that have a little bit more body fat, they've got, basically a larger bank to pull from. So for some of them, they can do a longer fast and get great results. But you do have to be careful. You have to be careful with that hormone balance and utilizing the feast famine cycle appropriately.
And you're trying to obviously make sure if people are going into a fasting session, they don't have extreme thyroid or autoimmune or massive adrenal issues. They're kind of going into with a place of metabolic stability before they're jumping into that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Any sort of sudden dietary change, and that's a really big thing I harp on in this book. Any sort of sudden dietary change, your body really has to adapt to. So your body wants a certain level of balance and homeostasis. And the more adrenally damaged you are, more adrenal dysfunction you have, the harder it is for you to adapt to any change. So if you haven't worked out, think about this example. If you haven't exercised and you go in and you do very long, intense workout with a trainer, you're going to be really sore for a few days, right? You're going to need a lot of recovery. You wouldn't want to go back the next day and do the same workout. This is kind of the same thing with fasting or anything else. The best way to do is kind of lean into it, right? So I always tell people when it comes to fasting, start with a 12-hour overnight fast, hydrate your body well in the morning, okay? And then once you get to that point, you feel good with that, you push it up to 13, 14 hours, right? So it's small, gradual steps. And if you notice at some point that your body's just not feeling great, back it down a little bit, okay? So there's different strategies you can do with applying intermittent fasting. It's really the same thing with the ketogenic diet. And I talk about it in the book. If you're eating 400 grams of carbohydrates a day, don't all of a sudden the next day go down to 20 grams of carbohydrates. Too much of a shock on the system. So you start gradually reducing, okay? And I give a formula for how to do that in the book, where how you gradually reduce. And that's a gentle approach to keto adaptation that I find works for a lot of people, okay? And
that's
so
great.
I think that's key.
That's great. Yeah. Typically with patients that I recommend, and I don't really call it a keto. I just call it, I have a paleo template. That's kind of my foundation. And then we go lower carb paleo, which is essentially going to be ketogenic. Once we go below 50 or 20 net carbs, that kind of gets those ketones up. And then there could be moderate, there can be autoimmune, there can be carnivore. Carnivore is essentially a default keto, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%
absolutely.
default.
Yep.
I find the big pitfalls with keto, just with people already having metabolic disturbances, is number one, poor digestion. There's just biliary insufficiency, not enough enzymes, not enough acids. And then these foods have a really tough time being digested. What's your experience with that?
Oh, that's huge. In fact, in the book, I talk about how, working with people with a ketogenic diet over the years, I found that if I have 3 people, I put them on, in general, roughly around 60% of the population will respond favorably to a ketogenic diet. But then you've got that other 30 to 40% that just really, really struggles. And oftentimes it's due to the fact that they're not getting good bile release, poor stomach acid, poor bile release. And those things need to be addressed. I talk in detail about that in the book. I go through a lot of strategies to help improve stomach acid, improve bile. I know you talk a lot about that in this show, things like doing apple cider vinegar and water, drinking ginger tea throughout the day. I talk about some of the top herbs, things like dandelion, radishes. I eat radishes almost every single day, cucumbers, celery, really good for helping improve bile flow, thinning out the bile, improving bile flow. You got things like artichoke, another really, really good one for that. So adding in some of these great foods, artichokes, dandelions, arugula, things like that into your diet will help thin that bile and help improve the bile flow. And yeah, a lot of people have bile stones, so gallstones in their gallbladder. And a lot of people don't have their gallbladder. And if you've had your gallbladder taken out, it's almost a guarantee that your liver, the bile ducts in your liver, because your liver is what actually produces bile. Gallbladder is just a storage component for it.
Yep.
But the bile ducts in your liver are most likely jammed up. So you're getting very poor bile flow. So you're struggling with being able to emulsify and digest those fats and get the fat soluble nutrients. You got to really flush those out. And there are different strategies for flushing them out. Okay. Different cleanses and things like that. And I even talk about one in the book. You can also do something as simple as taking activated charcoal roughly about 30 minutes to an hour before you eat a meal. Okay. Consuming a good, good quality meal and including some of those vegetables I talked about, artichokes, radishes, arugula, things like that to help thin the bile flow. And then also taking some supplements like dandelion, bile salts like choline, things like that can really help with pushing out more bile and clearing those bile stones. So I actually have a gallbladder, or it's called a bile flush protocol in the book that utilizes charcoal, because charcoal is a great binder for the gut, and it will bind bad bile and bile stones and help pull that stuff out of the system.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of toxins in the bile, so it makes sense if your bile is being released into the small intestine. If there's a whole bunch of charcoal there, it'll kind of bind up a lot of the not so nice critters, right? Not so nice stuff in there. Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah,
and
you
that's
kind of
that's key for SIBO too, right? So a lot of people don't realize it. We have an epidemic of bacterial overgrowth in our small intestine. There's so many people dealing with that. And bile is really important. Good bile flow is really important for sterilizing the small intestinal environment. So,
it is. Yeah. Like bile acids tend to have a negative impact on bad bacteria, acids in general, right? Probiotics, like Lactobacillus acidophilus means acid loving, right? We look at yeast infections, right? Or BV. A lot of times there's a big connection with taking birth control pills. Why? That alkalizes things. People think alkalization is good. Well, not necessarily. It creates actually a more hospitable environment for bad stuff to grow. So yeah, having good biliary flow. And obviously if someone doesn't have a gallbladder, you're going to probably want them on bile salts for life,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You got it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you've kind of, I've kind of see what you've done here with the book. You've kind of disguised keto with a whole bunch of other functional medicine topics, like Hpa Axis issues, like digestion issues, like SIBO, like other issues that are connected to ketogenic diet. So this isn't just something that's just, hey, this is only for keto. You connect a lot of the other systems to it, which is really good, because we know in functional medicine, it's like throwing a rock in the water, it ripples out, and the ripples are all the other systems connected. So I thought you did a really good job connecting that.
Yeah, absolutely. Keto is great for addressing an issue with insulin resistance, which many people in our society have because food is so prevalent. We tend to eat a higher carbohydrate diet, obviously, in America. And so keto can be a great approach from that perspective, but it's only one tool in our tool belt. And we really have to look at the entire lifestyle and do a lot of different things that help address our response to stress, improve our digestive health, all the different things that we've been talking about here.
And you talk about the Hpa Axis here. What are some of the big strategies that you use to kind of help calm down the Hpa Axis, and how does that help with the ketogenic diet? How does that dovetail with that?
Yeah, well, for sure. So with the Hpa Axis, we really try to prioritize good sleep, rest, and deep breathing. So if we are short, shallow breathing, which most of us are, our body thinks we're in a fight or flight state. So it thinks we're in danger. And so we've got to start to actually open up and take long, deep breaths. Our body knows when we're taking a long, deep breath, we're not in danger. We're not trying to run away from somebody with a spear or a lion or whatever it is chasing us. And so it knows we're in a relaxed state, and that's going to stimulate the part of our nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us relax. And that's super important. So doing things like that. So deep breathing, really getting good, high quality sleep, even taking a power nap if you need to in the mid afternoon, especially if you've got a stressful day or stressful life. That can be really important. Getting out and getting good sun exposure. So sun itself, right, can be really, really therapeutic for our body, grounding our body. So going out barefoot on grass, dirt, sand, a little harder this time of year, but doing that as much as you can, that's actually going to help ground your your electromagnetic frequency. So there's a healthy EMF that comes from the ground. Yep. And that's almost like showering from all the artificial electromagnetic frequencies that come from our cell phone and our computer. So that, and all of those EMFs are putting a stress on our system. So just going out, spending 10 minutes with your bare feet on grass, dirt, sand, even concrete, you'll get a healthy electromagnetic frequency, which is, again, showering your electromagnetic field. So these are all great strategies that are helpful and very, very important for a ketogenic diet, because really with a ketogenic diet, just like anything, I mean, ultimately you want your body to be very adaptive and resilient. And if you're overwhelmed by stress, it's going to be really hard to adapt to that, to get into ketosis. Okay. In fact, if you have higher amounts of cortisol, right, or different stress hormones are being released, that's going to keep your blood sugar elevated, right? Cortisol is a glucocorticoid. So its job is to keep glucose elevated in the bloodstream. And then your body's going to respond to that by pumping out insulin. And a lot of people will go through this cascade where high cortisol, high blood sugar, high insulin, and they're not even eating a meal, but they're metabolizing this just from the stored sugar in their liver and their muscles. So we got to keep the adrenals under control.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. Now, when people switch to a ketogenic template, and I like the word template over diet because template allows flexibility. Some people who are more active can handle carbs at a significantly higher level than someone who's massively insulin resistant. They may only be able to handle a couple of servings of vegetables and that's it. Some can handle a handful of berries in there. Some can do a serving of safe starch. So everyone's a little bit different. But what should people's stools look like? I know you did a whole page on this regarding the Bristol stool chart, but if fiber is coming in less, if let's say you're only eating a couple of servings of vegetables, what should your stools look like? And if they're on the more constipated side or loose side, what can we do about that?
Yeah, you want your stools to be well-formed, brown, well-formed, and ideally, easy to pass, right? So they should be very, very easy to pass. And you should be having 1 to maybe even up to 4 bowel movements a day, right? Easy to pass, comes out quickly, brown colored, well-formed, shouldn't be like floating on the top, should sink to the bottom. And if you're not noticing that, if you do feel like you're constipated, and for some people, when they make a diet change, there's changes that take place in their microbiome that can definitely cause constipation. So things that help, really hydrating your body well is important. Getting enough electrolytes. In fact, that's a huge issue with a ketogenic diet, because when your insulin goes down, so when you follow a ketogenic diet, it drops your insulin. When your insulin goes down, you don't retain sodium. So in our society, we hear about how we need a low salt diet, but that's because most people are on a diet that's high in carbohydrates and they have high insulin. So again, when we fast or when we're in a ketogenic diet, insulin goes down, we actually need more salt.
Yep.
And that's going to be important for good bowel movement. It's going to be very important for energy and very important for Hpa Axis, right? So taking in good salts, very important. Eating trace mineral rich foods. I really harp on that in the book. So that's going to be things like sea vegetables, okay, seaweed, things like that, wild caught fish, very rich in trace minerals, olives, olive oil, avocados, avocado oil, cruciferous vegetables, right? These are all great foods that we should be consuming on this sort of a diet to get the trace minerals that we need. You can also do things like magnesium supplementation. Magnesium can really, really help with improving bowel motility, right? So just taking a little bit of magnesium can be a helpful approach. And then hydrating your body well, right? And I already mentioned that, but most people are chronically dehydrated. So good hydration can really help with good quality bowel movements.
We may obviously just get even more fiber in just from our more vegetables. Most people probably aren't getting enough vegetables. So just adding the veggies in will help move the needle, right?
That's right. Avocados are a great source of fiber, right? Tons of fiber, more fiber in an avocado than a bowl of oatmeal, right? So, so real good source.
That's really good. Really good to know. Also, also avocados are like the highest source of potassium. People think, oh,
Exactly.
they associate potassium and bananas, but guess what?
Yeah,
Avocados have twice the amount of potassium and they're lower carbohydrate. So
that's
way
right.
better way to go. I like that. So
Yeah.
when do you typically recommend, let's just say, a keto template with vegetables to a carnivore keto template? When does that switch happen? Why would you
Yeah.
recommend it? Who would that person be that would benefit from the keto version with just meat?
Yeah, it really depends on the individual. So for some people, like here's a classic sign that you're not producing enough stomach acid. If you eat a steak and you feel really fatigued, you have acid reflux, you feel nauseous, you feel like the food's
Hmm.
just sitting there in your stomach. Okay. That's a sign that you're not producing enough stomach acid. We need to really, really focus on the stomach acid.
Right.
Other people will respond great. They eat a steak, they feel amazing. Right. But if they eat a bowl of broccoli, okay, and you can do this test on yourself, eat a big bowl of broccoli, and if you're gassy, bloated, you have more pain in your body, you're having brain fog, that's a sign that you most likely have bacterial overgrowth in your small intestine, and you're probably not producing enough digestive enzymes. So we may need to address that. You just may notice that eating a more, for one person, eating more plant-based, they feel better, and another person eating more meat-based or, pushing all the way to 100% carnivore, they just feel better in general. So it's kind of an experimentation. Okay. But in general, if you isolate, certain macronutrients and really just focus on consuming them in a meal and then see how your body responds or how you feel, that's one way to identify. Again, big bowl of broccoli, you're pretty much just getting fiber there. Okay. And you'll see how your body responds to a healthy source of fiber. If you eat a big steak, you're pretty much just getting, protein and fat there. So you're going to see how your body responds to that protein and fat. Okay. And then for other people, they notice when, they eat an avocado, right? Or too much olive oil, right? They just feel really awful. And that could be a sign that, again, you're not getting enough bile flow, right?
Yeah.
So these are all ways to test.
Very good. And I hear a lot of people, with that Game Changers documentary that's out, and a lot of people just kind of talking about the vegan diet, kind of comparing it to keto. One thing I always tell people is animal products are incredibly nutrient dense. They're very nutrient
Yeah,
dense. When you compare
absolutely.
the amount of protein
Yeah.
in, let's say, some grass-fed beef to, let's say, some kale, people say, oh, kale's like 20 or 30% protein, but that's based on calories, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
based on like it's a percent
And
of
it's lucky
calories
if
per
it has a
serving.
gram, in a whole bunch
I know. So I tell
of
patients,
kale.
like, okay, like, do you realize that 8 ounces of grass-fed meat, right, which is probably a reasonable amount for a guy to go out and get access to when they go out, have a steak or a fillet, right? You have to have 15 servings of kale. That's
Yeah.
insane. That's a lot. So you can
Yeah.
easily have an 8 ounce serving of grass-fed meat and, eat that comfortably in 15 minutes. Good luck having 15 servings of kale. So the nutrient density is just very high.
Yeah.
And then once you add in some organ meat with that, it's like, wow. And
Oh
then,
yeah,
obviously
absolutely.
you can, if you want to supercharge some of these things, there's some good vegetable juices that you can do that are just low sugar. I just do straight up celery juice with, lemon every morning just
Yeah.
because I get 25% of my potassium. Throw
Yeah.
another avocado in at lunch. Now I'm at 50% of my potassium in just two things, right? Because I think
Yeah.
low potassium, low magnesium is one of those things that everyone deals with, even on keto, could be an
Yeah.
issue, right? But if you're getting 6 to 8
Totally.
servings of green vegetables and maybe you're slipping in some organ meats or things like that, then you're going to be on the right track. So where I was going with that was the nutrient density part. Can you talk about
Yeah.
like the nutrient density in a keto template compared to just anything else?
Absolutely. Well, if you're eating a real food-based ketogenic diet, you're going to get tremendous amount of nutrient density. And we always want to focus on the most nutrient dense foods. So when we look at grains in general, grains really don't offer us much. They have a little bit of B vitamins, some fiber, and a whole lot of starch, right? And the problem is when we're eating things that elevate our blood sugar, okay, sugar itself in our system acts as an anti-nutrient, right? We need a certain amount, but once we get beyond that, it acts more like an anti-nutrient where it actually drains our magnesium, potassium, and the more insulin resistant we become. So the more that we're spiking our insulin, the more insulin resistant we become, the less we're able to actually bring nutrients into cells, because insulin has a very important job of bringing sugar as well as other nutrients like magnesium, like potassium into cells. And so when we're insulin resistant, our body's not responding to it, we're going to have problems. So grains in general are very, very, they're an inferior food. okay, as opposed to something like grass-fed steak, okay, or organ meats, obviously really nutrient dense, wild caught fish, and then plant-based foods, right? So we can get obviously a tremendous amount of nutrients from things like broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, different herbs that we've already talked about, dandelion, ginger, turmeric, right? So we can get tremendous amount of polyphenols, antioxidants. Dark chocolate would be another good one, even, organic coffee or green tea. Tremendous amount of powerful nutrients to help quench oxidative stress and provide all the powerful nutrients we need. In fact, meat has vitamin B12, zinc, iron, a lot of things people are very deficient in. Okay. So
how do you get someone to wrap this, or like, because if they're like, hey, I'm vegan, I'm vegetarian, I can't do animal products, it becomes really hard. Now, you could probably still do it and go keto, plant-based, but how would you get them on board with, say, hey, let's try it. Let's get some of these high quality animal products. What's that mindset shift you would say to get them on board with that and try it out?
Well, yeah, I think it really depends on why they're doing it. If they're trying to do it for a health purpose, I would just let them know that, basically on a vegan diet, it's very hard to get all your fat soluble nutrients as well as vitamin B12. So why don't we start? In fact, I have a whole program called my Cancer Cleanse program where I put my cancer patients on a low protein, high fiber, high nutrient ketogenic template, right? And we use things like grass-fed butter. Grass-fed butter is a great thing because it's loaded, super rich in fat soluble nutrients, retinol, vitamin E, conjugated linoleic acid. You have so much in there. And that's a great approach. So adding in some grass-fed butter, maybe some eggs. Okay. So eggs, again, super nutrient dense, especially the egg yolk. So you get so much nutrients, per calorie, I guess you could say, in egg yolk as well as in grass-fed butter. So those are great things to add in. And some people are okay with eating fish too, so coming from that kind of vegetarian vegan diet, a lot of people are okay with eating fish. So adding in some wild caught salmon, something along those lines, and then just seeing how they feel when they add in those foods. And for some people, they notice that they do feel a lot better, and then they're more open-minded to consuming other animal products as well.
Is there anything else you could do? Let's say, okay, if you get the buy-in with fish and egg yolks, at least, or eggs, you're kind of gold, right? But what if you don't get the buy-in for any animal products? Can it still be done? What does that strategy look like?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of people out there. There's a whole Facebook page on vegan ketogenic diet. So you're obviously there's a lot more restrictions. So you're really going to be eating the same, 20 foods over and over and over again, but you still have all your non-starchy vegetables.
Yep.
You're going to be eating a lot of avocados, lots of coconut and coconut fats, nuts and seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts, pecans, macadamia nuts, things like that, olives and olive oil. Okay. So it's going to tend to be, and obviously you can supplement with a protein powder. You can get like a good pea protein or hemp protein or something.
You'd probably need a protein powder though, right? For the most part.
Especially if you're an athlete, I would say, if you're doing any sort of athletics or resistance training, you would definitely need to do it. I think you can do it for certain individuals. They can do it without a protein powder, but yeah, it's going to be very low protein in general. And you're really banking on the fact that your body's got a good digestive system to be able to break down and pull whatever amino acids it can out of nuts, seeds, avocados and other plants.
And the absorption on that's going to be lower just because of the anti-nutrients, and then the amino acid profile won't be as favorable, right? Not as much of the sulfur or the beta-alanine into the branch chain.
That's why I would recommend some sort of a good protein powder if you're doing that.
And if you were to do one, would that be like the pea or anything else you'd recommend pea protein besides that?
It probably depends on the individual. Most people do great on pea protein. Some people don't, right? So they can try hemp protein. That would be another good source.
Okay.
There's rice protein out there, probably not as good as the pea and the hemp though.
Do you have to worry about any gluten or cross contamination coming from like a grain-based protein at all?
You definitely could, right? And so for some people, they do fine on rice. Okay. Other people, they have reactions to it, right? Because there is gliadin. There are some gliadin compounds in rice, right? Mm-hmm. So even though it's considered gluten-free, it's still kind of in the same family.
That makes sense. And so you kind of have one argument, that's your elevator pitch on the health side. What about the other side, which is like, hey, this is better for the environment. Being vegan is better for the environment. What's your pitch on that?
Well, actually having animals and raising them properly is more of a sustainable system. So when we look at regenerative agriculture, what we actually need is, we need chickens out there eating weeds, eating insects and things like that. And then they poop, right? and then their poop actually fertilizes ground, right? Or if you have cows out there, they're going to eat the grass, they're going to poop. And now they've got this really nutrient dense poo, right? And so that
Yeah.
poop, is now great for the worms and all the different insects who break it down further. And now it enriches the soil. And then the chickens come in, they go ahead, they eat the worms, right? And it's like this whole cycle. And so it's actually enriching the soil.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's enriching the soil. So we need these animals and we need them grazing. Okay. Obviously, factory farmed, you and I are both very much against that.
Yep.
That is not sustainable and not a sustainable system. Animals aren't treated well and their meat and dairy products are not healthy. But good pasture raised animal products, good pasture raised animals actually help strengthen and add more nutrients to the soil. So when we're growing other plants on the soil, those plants are healthier and better for our bodies.
Yeah. And I'd also just add in is that when you start feeding animals grains and soy and corn, that's where you kind of have to have this open loop where you start to have to pull the poop away because now the E. coli. But when you start to have this closed loop where, okay, it's grass the whole time, there's less E. coli, then the chickens come in and then they eat the worms. And then you kind of, I think Joel Salatin kind of has that whole model down at Polyface Farm where it's a total closed loop. You don't have to bring poop in and out and move, it's just it's so much better. And also not to mention most vegetarian food is going to be processed and carbohydrate based. And then it's going to be primarily supporting a monoculture where there's just a lot of different crops and things and a lot of pesticides used. And people forget, like if you're supporting any type of monoculture, you're also supporting snakes and rabbits and little animals that are getting killed in the combine and the harvesting of that. So and I always tell people, my mindset is it takes life to sustain life. Plants at some level are sentient and have a life force because they have to have a life force to sustain your life force. They have to. So at some level, they may not have a face or a cute mommy and daddy like an animal does. But number one, there's life there. Number two, just the monoculture is also going to be killing lots of other animals that you may not see directly, more indirectly. So yeah, I think that's good points.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, when you think about it, animals, their defense system is they can run or they can fight. Plants use kind of a low-level chemical warfare, right? So they have things like lectins, oxalates, different things like that that are compounds within them that can be hazardous or challenging for their predators to consume. So like, for example, things like oxalates, which are crystals, within things like spinach and dark chocolate and nuts and seeds, things like that. Those oxalates can be really tough on the body. We've adapted to have a certain bacteria, Oxalobacter forminges, within our digestive system that eats these oxalates for us so they don't get into our circulation and cause damage, right? Because they can cause pain. Oxalates are associated with pain. High oxalate loads are also associated with issues with our brain fog, learning issues, autism. A lot of autistic kids have high levels of oxalates in their system. So what happens though is in our society, many people, we've grown up drinking chlorinated water, for example, right? So we're not filtering out our water. Chlorine kills these things. We've taken antibiotics, or we've eaten meat that's been given antibiotics that has damaged the Oxalobacter species in our gut. And now we're not able to break down and metabolize those oxalates. So then we think, okay, I'm going to eat, this plant-based diet. And we end up loading up on these oxalates and we end up with chronic joint pain. We're not able to focus and concentrate very effectively. We end up with kidney stones, different things like that. So, so there are pros and cons to eating meat and vegetables, and you really got to try to find the diet that works best for you. And that's what I really tried to focus on in the book, was providing a diet that's going to work for most people and troubleshooting strategies, basically to help people who are struggling to digest fats. People are struggling with adrenal fatigue, thyroid issues, things like that. So good doing a deep dive on all of that.
I love it. That totally makes so much sense. So the Oxalobacter, so really good, healthy gut bacterial function, good, healthy digestion, good bacteria is going to really help you deal with a lot of those plant anti-nutrients even better. I love that. Very good. Now, when you're doing a fast, like let's say it's a 24-hour or 48-hour fast, what does that look like in regards to nutrients? Like, could I have some celery juice, or could I be drinking like, let's say an enriched Pellegrino with some extra minerals? Are you worrying about the electrolytes during the fast? And then how much caloric drinks could you put in, like a bone broth or a celery? Like how much can you consume from that where you're still kind of fasting, so to speak?
Well, I would say it depends on your goals, right? So one of the main goals of fasting, there are many different goals. So if your goal is to improve insulin resistance, okay, you can do a partial fast and you'll still get great results. A partial fast would be like drinking your celery juice, doing your bone broth, right? Because basically you're keeping insulin low, right? And that's going to help improve insulin resistance, going to help improve and reduce inflammation in your body. So if those are your main goals, that can work great. They can also work great for weight loss. If your goal is maximal autophagy, and autophagy is this term meaning self-eating, where your body's trying to break down older, damaged cellular components like mitochondria, damaged mitochondria, and things like that. If that's your goal, then the ideal way to do it is a water fast or a water salt fast, nothing with calories. Okay. That's where you're going to get the most amount of autophagy. It doesn't mean you won't get any autophagy. You'll still get autophagy if you're drinking celery juice during your fast. If you're on a caloric restriction during that fast, consuming roughly less than 40% of your normal calorie load, you're still going to activate some level of autophagy. But the water fast is going to get you the most benefits. So I would really base it off of how you feel. Okay. So
when I have a good brand of water, like, are you just drinking like reverse osmosis with some extra like Redmond's real salt in there? Or are you doing like a Pellegrino? Is there a kind of water that you're recommending?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. A mineral water would be great. You could do reverse osmosis, add back some salts. I actually recently got a hydrogen water system, and a hydrogen, molecular hydrogen, is amazing for reducing oxidative stress in the system. Yeah. So that's what I've been drinking here lately. But yeah, I mean, just water and salts. What happens is, just like anything, your body actually gets better and better at doing this. So like our ancestors, when they fasted, they weren't asking themselves, can I have, bulletproof coffee during my fast? Can I do this? They just didn't have food, right? So they would just fast. So for me, when I first started doing intermittent fasting, okay, 24-hour fast seemed too intimidating. So I was doing somewhere around an 18 to 20-hour fast. And that was very easy for me. And I was drinking a lot of water during that period of time. And, now that I've adapted, because I actually do 2 24-hour fasts every single week. And I feel amazing doing it. I don't actually need salt. All I need is water. Now I'll put some apple cider vinegar in my water from time to time, just for the added benefits.
On when do you do your fast? Are you trying to choose a less stressful day
to
do it?
Yeah. So basically I fast Wednesday from lunch till lunch on Thursday. And I fast usually on Saturday, after lunch on Saturday to lunch on Sunday is typically when I'm fasting. Now it can range a little bit based on my schedule, but those are typically the times that I'm doing it. And yeah, I have absolutely no problem. So what happens is, when you first begin doing it, it's a stressor on your system. Once you adapt to it, it's not as much of a stressor. So I actually do it, like Wednesday is usually a very busy day for me. So I'm actually doing it on a busier day. And I noticed that my heart rate, I have an Oura ring. So I noticed that my heart rate variability is amazing. It's so good on the nights when I haven't eaten dinner. I fast through dinner and I sleep deeper, and I get just more restorative rest during that period of time.
But you're also eating lunch on Wednesday. So you really have enough nutrition, because you probably had something in the morning, you're hydrating, you had probably a really nutrient dense lunch when you kicked off the fast, right?
Probably a bunch of one meal. Exactly. Right. So I had one meal, right? Roughly somewhere between 1 and 2 o'clock. I eat one meal.
It's probably a bigger meal, right?
Bigger
Over
meal.
1,000 calories.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually I have a protein shake with avocados. I put 2 avocados, coconut milk.
Oh, wow. So that's a ton of calories.
Protein powder, in a shake, and I have that.
Okay. So, so you got like over 2,000 milligrams of potassium. I mean, that's probably 80% fat. I mean, you get well over 1,000 calories, probably 1,500 calories. Yeah. So that's the thing is, when you do something like that, your meals have to really be on purpose. You couldn't just have a haphazard, processed kind of meal. You really got to be on point. You're kicking that fast off with a ton of minerals, a ton of nutrient density, a ton of good fatty acids. And that kind of gives you momentum to go for the next 24 hours.
Exactly. It's a feast famine cycle. Now, it also depends on what somebody's health goals are and how lean they are. Okay. I'm extremely lean. So when I eat, I need to feast. And what's interesting, Justin, is with this lifestyle, I'm almost never hungry until I start eating. Okay. So like I won't even be hungry on Thursday. Like I'll do a 24-hour fast. I'll work out right at the end of the fast typically. So I'll get an intense workout in, fasting 22, 23 hours. And I'm still not hungry even at the end of that workout.
You're so leptin sensitive.
Yeah. But once I start eating, then my body's like, okay, I want food.
You're like, you're going into caveman mode. You're like,
exactly. Now my insulin goes up. Now I'm like, okay, now I need to eat. I need to eat food. Right. And so that's really, you know, the kind of the natural mechanisms here. And so my body knows what it needs to do. So I'm just listening to my body's natural, you know, inclinations there. Now, for certain individuals, okay, especially if you have more weight to lose, you're trying to lose more weight. Okay. Doing this sort of fasting can really help. And then cycling in, you know, a feast day oftentimes can be really helpful. Because again, you want this counterbalance. You want to be telling your body, hey, food is prevalent. We don't need to stress out. But at the same time, we're also in a famine, right? And we need to reduce inflammation. Yeah. So it's kind of like this, we're constantly changing that message, and that will help the body to adapt more effectively. So feast and famine.
Can you have coffee on those fasting days?
I can't. Yeah, you can drink coffee. I always tell people with coffee, the key is this: when you drink coffee, you should feel great. Okay. Coffee should naturally be like a performance enhancement tool.
Yeah.
And coffee itself, caffeine and the caffeic and chlorogenic acid that's in coffee enhance autophagy mechanisms. However, there is a percentage of people that have a food sensitivity. They have a immune reaction to coffee, or they just don't metabolize caffeine well.
Exactly.
Okay? Yeah. And for those people, if you don't feel good, right, you notice heart palpitations, you notice like worsening fatigue a few hours later, or it gives you cravings, then it's not good for you. Okay. So then you want to avoid it. So that's the rule with coffee. If you drink a cup of coffee, you feel amazing the rest of the day. It just set you off. Drink coffee. You know what I mean? And if you drank coffee and you didn't feel good, don't drink coffee.
Very good. Dr. David, my man.
Yeah.
The Keto Metabolic Breakthrough, y'all. Feel free. We'll put the links down below so you guys can get access to it. Phenomenal book. David, anything else you want to leave the listeners with?
You know, I think you guys will love the book. You know, I talk a lot about nutrient timing, carb cycling, which is, you know, because there's a time and place for carbs, like just like we've talked about in the past. So when to do it, when you should add in carbs, how to set up a carb cycling strategy is a big component of what I talk about in the book. How to appropriately do intermittent fasting to get the best results. I talk a lot about hormones, thyroid hormone, insulin, sex hormones, different things like that, how to balance it all with the book. So definitely check that out. And, you know, those of you guys are listening to Justin's YouTube channel and podcast, you guys are getting the best of the best here. I always like to tune in and hear what Justin's doing because he's on top of his game. So
Dr. Jockers, I really appreciate it. I'm going to do a little video book review of your book, kind of hit my favorite 3 to 5 topics in the book. We'll do a video out. So people want to get that, get access to that, feel free, make sure you subscribe. And then we'll put the link down below on Amazon so people can grab it and find it and support David. He's got some great work out there. We really appreciate, you know, this book. It's really amazing. All the good infographics. I mean, I'm just skimming in through here and I'm just like, wow, I could just kind of look at some of the infographics and barely even read it. And I can still get a ton of great information just by skimming it. You did a really good job making it very consolidated and easy to digest.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, that's really what we try to do is I'm a very visual learner. So I enjoy reading, but I also enjoy seeing infographics. And so I wanted to create this book for somebody like me that really likes to see diagrams, infographics, things like that, that really that really help you understand it and be able to picture the concepts I'm talking about.
Well, great job, man. Keep it up, Dr. David. You have an awesome day, man. We'll chat soon.
Thanks. You too, man.
Bye.